Welcome back. This is Edithson Abelard with another tutorial on how to use Maya with Unity 3D. In this video, we're going to discuss how to add steam to our modern bathroom. Now, first things first, I want to show you something in Maya. As you know from previous videos, I'm a big advocate on getting these scenes back into Unity as soon as possible, whether they're UV'd or have materials, just so you can get a feel for the placement, the scale, and the size of different objects, and in comparison to the Unity world. Something else that we really want to do is also get it into the hands of our developers so they can start creating some rich interactive experiences that aren't linked per se to the actual model. Something like this where we have this door. We know that this door is going to be able to turn on this axis. So we can tell our developer, hey, look, this door is going to move in such and such way, and they can maybe start building out the interactivity, and we can just continually update the assets. So his interactivity will still be there. He'll still have his scripts, but we can just swap out the material, or if we need to, swap out the model. Something else I want to point out real quick is some of these elements are actually named poly surface. Not good. You definitely want to, whenever you are modeling or at one point, definitely rename all these assets, because when they go into Unity, they're going to be named exactly how you have it here. So make sure to be careful that before you hand it off to a developer that these are named correctly. And just for testing purposes, I'm going to show you what it looks like in Unity. Now, I put them all in the Maya export, and I exported out the whole entire scene. So as you can see, bracket, light holder, PQ. So when you have something like the closet, it's easy for them to understand, hey, this is PQ 1, 2 versus a closet, or a sink. So whenever you do rename things, or whenever you're modeling, it does make a difference for them. Alright, cool. So let's just take a quick look at what we're going to create. I'm just going to hit play. And as you can see, there's a slight discoloration, and that comes from the steam from within the shower. So this is what we're going to work on, just teaching you how to create this billowy smoke using the new Shuriken particle system, as well as Maya, as well as Photoshop material. Alright, so let's get started. Alright, so let's get started by creating a new scene. You can go to File, New, or just Control N. Alright, cool. So now we're going to start with a blank slate. We have a camera already here. We're not going to need it. I'm just going to grab my Maya export, grab the bathroom, just drop it in there. Quickly zero it out. As you can see. Now we're going to go into our standard assets. Just grab our first person controller. We can drop that into the scene. We don't have to zero this one out. We can just place them somewhere. Now, remember some of the previous videos, instead of putting collision detection around the meshes themselves, which can get quite complicated, instead what I'm going to do is just quickly create a plane, and we're just going to put that underneath our whole environment. And all that will do is just give us something to stand on. We're not going to put any collision detection on the sides right now, because we just want the player to be able to walk around. But in future videos, we will talk about creating a rectangle collision area for this whole entire sink, because when you walk into it, right now you're going to walk through it, but rarely will you actually have to go deep into this area. So that'll just give us ways to really limit the player's movement. Alright, so we got that. Let's go ahead and create some lights, because we know it's going to be black when we start. I'm going to do point lights. Get them in here. Well, I'll actually map them to where we really want our lights. You can see the intensity is quite high. Let's get this down. We'll keep the color. We'll take the intensity down to maybe 0.2. Well, we'll do 0.3. There'll be a few lights in here, but we don't want it to be too bright. So we'll just duplicate. Once again, I'm just loosely following these these little lights that we created on top. And then we have one more up here. As you can see, with the low intensity, when you multiply the amount of lights, you eventually do get a nice lit up environment. So now let's just press play and take a look at it. Alright, cool. So we can move around our environment. The sync is relatively at the right place. This one might be a little low, but we can definitely look at that later on. You'll see one of my models is actually quite high up there. So that's something that we can fix and re-import. Alright, perfect. So next, let's start with our particles. Alright, first thing we're going to do is take a look at this Photoshop file. So all this is a 64 by 64 PSD file. You don't need to convert it. Unity 3D does a great job of taking the assets and bringing them in as PSD. I prefer to do that just because, as you can see here, get this out the way. This is what I have as a texture, and you can go in and quickly just swap out or put multiple layers together, and Unity will just update. So I won't hit save yet, just so we can see it. Let's jump back into Unity. Alright, cool. So let me just make sure I save this scene now. And we're in scenes, and we'll call it, well, bathroom steam 2. Alright. Close this out. You definitely want to, whenever you can, you definitely want to put everything in folders and organize them any way you want to. I almost want to say there are certain things that will load first, like the standard assets, and you can check out the Unity website and explain more of those, but you definitely want to separate them out into something that's logical. So we're going to start off with, of course, these materials are the material for our bathroom scene, but we're going to create our own material, and we're just going to go in, create material. We'll call this steam 2, and all you're going to do now is go back, grab your steam texture and just drop it in here. So now we have the texture in here. Our next goal is to create our particles. So let's go ahead and, we don't want a wind zone. Let's create a particle system. Alright, so when it starts out, if you saw the video on using particles before and you've never used a Shuriken system, it's a little different, a little more, I want to say advanced, but also intuitive. So don't be intimidated by the look of it and all the different options, because once you get used to it, it really is very beneficial. So the first thing we're going to do is grab from our particle system. We're going to rename this to Steam 2. As you can see, the particles from up here, they're moving decently, but when we zoom in, grab something. Now, if you see this, where your particles are no longer moving, simply click on your particle and it'll start again. You also have the pause, simulate, stop also, so you don't have to have it running, especially if you're not doing anything with the particles. Alright, so the first thing we're going to do is we definitely want to slow this down, but before we do anything else, what we're going to do is take our steam and drop it onto a particle. Boom. Now what you'll notice is this is actually billboards, and it doesn't look anything like steam, but as we go down all these lists, we'll definitely start changing that. The first thing we want to do is change the duration. I want it at 9 seconds. The start delay just gives us an offset. So if you hover over, Unity will give us a description of it. So display in seconds that the particle systems will wait before emitting particles. So that's cool. Start lifetime is another offset that we can use. Okay, the speed, we definitely want that to come down. We don't want that to move too fast. And this just gives us the opportunity to, later on when we actually map the speed using a curve, we'll be able to change some of this, but we don't want the steam moving up as fast as it was. Let's also bring this down a little bit. Alright, now let's change this. Now our problem is the actual steam 2 material is set to diffuse. Now because we're using a particle, we definitely want to begin first with coming down here to particles. Now, because our particles are black, we want to use additive. And the reason for that is it will basically take the black and ignore it and use it more or less as a mask, and anything that's white will then come up. So we hit additive, and now you can see we have these smokes. Now, if you remember, there were quite a few different additives. Additive soft, which is, now you see there isn't that blue color because it's not multiplying as much. We also have additive multiply. Now, depending on what you're doing and depending on your scene, you definitely want to play around with them and see which one, but we definitely want to do an additive. If we were to do multiply, you see it's the opposite. Now you'll see more of the black, and it's more of an alpha. So the white now is see-through, and that's only because of the intensity of the white. Now, what we can do is flip it, and if we were to actually remove the black, we can also do that as well. But for now, we can definitely just keep it with the black color in the background. Go to the additive soft. I like how that was. Let's click on our steam again, and we're definitely starting. As you can see, it's coming up. Now we just have to make it a little thicker and play around with some of the settings. So let's do that. Color we can keep the same. The start size we can definitely increase. As we increase it, you can see now it's really starting to look like a nice thick steam. But it's kind of ending really soon. So we'll fix that. Also, we definitely want to change the speed because steam, it doesn't move around that fast, and it'll actually be distracting to the user. So let's keep going. Gravity modifier. We were not really going to be using much gravity, but as you can see, you're playing around with it. You can see you can make this some nice effects. Let's go down real quick. By just using the gravity modifier, and that just gives us the amount of influence gravity will have on our actual particles themselves. Alright, let's go into emission. The rate we can take up a little bit, and this is just the amount of particles. Let's hover over real quick. The number of particles emitted per second. So we can just increase that. You don't want to do too much now, but as you can see, with more particles, you get a lot more realism in that steam. Now, of course, these are all things that you can change at runtime. So in a later video, which I'm very excited to be putting out, we'll be able to actually turn the steam on and turn it off. There'll be a lot of other cool interactions in here, and the steam will just be one of the touching points. Alright, cool. Now the shape. Now what the shape is how the steam or the particles actually come out. Right now we have it set to cone. You can do a hemisphere, so they emit a little differently. You can do mesh, or you can do, in our case, we're going to go for a box. So let's just make our box encompass our actual shower. So we're just going to increase the X, roughly. Move this up a little bit. Increase the Y. Now you're probably thinking the steam is extremely out of control, but we actually have a way of limiting how far the particles can exceed. So we'll get to that next. All right. Now remember, I was just mentioning limit over lifetime, and velocity over lifetime. Now our limit over lifetime will actually give us the ability to limit against the axes. So as we bring this in, you'll see that it can only go a certain distance. So if you want to know, this is a great way to limit, in our case, we really don't want the steam to go out into the whole entire room, and not just yet. But right now, for now, we definitely want to just limit it. So this is a good way to give that limiting factor. Yeah, as you can see, this is coming out pretty well. It's definitely extremely bright, and we'll fix that in just a little bit. And also what you'll see is everything is coming up, although they're, sporadically, jumping around, which we can increase our life to fix that. They are sporadically jumping around, but we'll be able to change that slightly. We want to randomize that also, just so it's not uniform. Nothing in life really is uniform, especially when animating. Another thing we can do is give it a burst of particles. So every once in a while there'll be just a straight burst of particles, and we can increase how many particles it bursts. But this just adds a little more randomness to it. As you can see, just randomly, just about every 3 seconds. But let's change that. All right. So now our shape is good. We can also emit from different directions also. This for us isn't going to work because steam doesn't actually go up and down, but it's just another way to show some randomness. Our velocity over lifetime. Now this is another one that we can change. We can change our y value or our x value, but what we want to do really is find a number that we like. We don't want it to go too fast, so I'm going to leave these relatively low. And stop this real quick. Now, color over lifetime. Now this is an interesting option. Now when we get started, let's enable this first. Our color over lifetime, we can actually change what the colors are. So you want to start it off a little darker or give it a little color, you can do that. So as you can see, it just adds a little more life to it. Now this I would actually do in definitely a later stage when we know what the room looks like, because we can slightly tint the steam, the color of the walls, and that will make it look so realistic. And just adds a little more depth to it. Alright, size over lifetime is another option. Now this we can use curves or random between two constants. I prefer to use curves, and this is one of those new features that came with the Shuriken system, where we can change it based off of this curve or make it constant. So you just have to find one that you feel works the best with you. You can have it working straight constant, or have it randomly show up like this. I think in our case, I actually like the constant. We can just bring up the value. Alright. Now something that will definitely help out this theme is actually down here in the render. We can look at a softness factor. Alright, so we can take a look at our max particle size. Now this just lets our particle system know how big it can actually get. So we can increase this to maybe a 3. Alright. And something else we can actually do is take a look at our steam. This is just going to open up Photoshop. Alright, we can swap out now. Remember I was mentioning before. Hit save. Come back into Unity. And now just stop and simulate our steam again. And now you can see now it's that different And I kind of like the way this one is going. So that's the reason why, or one of the great reasons, you definitely want to use Photoshop, because you can just swap out assets like that. So next, what we're going to do, because this is looking pretty good. Next, what we want to do is actually change our opacity, because right now they're very bright, and what we want really is for this to be just a little translucent, so that we can see through it. Actually, let's walk through it so you can see what it looks like. Yeah, there you go. So it's coming out really nice, but as you can see, it's definitely way too much steam for you to look out. And you want it to be just a little less so the user can actually look out and see some of the room. So next, let's change the steam. Alright, so the way you change the opacity is to come down here to start color. Now you'll see all of these values: red, green, blue, and alpha. Now all we have to do is just take it down to a number that we like. And this is one of those great things about Unity, is a lot of this stuff happens in real time. So you don't actually have to wait, compile, load, and test. You can see it actually in the browser. It's in the browser, in the editor. Alright. So now you can see, now the steam looks so much better. Because of the transparency, you can also see some of those shapes kind of break up a little bit, so they're not as harsh. So you can just keep playing around with this and find a combination that you like. What we can also do is I've already created a steam particle. We can multiply, we can double up. Let's just take this and create another one. Now you're probably saying, wow, we can just double up and create multiple steams, but there's actually another way, which is another benefit of having the Shuriken system, is there's another way for us to create sub emitters. So that's something that we'll get into the next video. But if you wanted to, let's say, add more steam to the whole room, you can easily do this. Take the actual second steam, come back. Let's check out our box. We'll get rid of this burst because we really don't want the burst. Let's get our shape. Let's make it wider. Look at it from the top. Now these are just rough shapes. Let's make it a lot lower. Alright. And what we'll also want to do is just go back to our limiter. Let's just zero this out. Change the dampen, and that just gives you the how much it actually affects it. So just randomize it a little bit. We can also take down the alpha a lot more. Let's just hit play. So now you have this center mass from which the steam is coming from. But if you step out the room now, or the shower, then you just have just a little steam on the outside. We can also take down the amount of steam that is emitting. Let's go and let's do that. Change the duration also. And all this just is gives us, change the start delay. We want whatever offset we can give. We definitely want to do that, just to add a little bit of randomness to it. Start speed. Change the rotation a little bit. You definitely don't want to change the gravity modifier too much. But you can also go in a negative, which will give you the same result as if you were to add some velocity or some force in the y direction. So that's something we can change. X. and the Z is going up. So you might just have to play with it a little bit, but as you can see, over a lifetime it changes. Excuse me. Let's make this a lot slower. So yeah, so just play around with it and just find results that you like. You can change the speed also over its lifetime using curves. Alright, so that's it for this video. What we've covered is a basic introduction to our particle system and creating steam. Using multiple using multiple particles systems in order to add a little more depth to our room. We covered a little bit about Maya and some of the things that will happen. I left this in here on purpose just to show you how in Maya you saw nothing. You came into Unity and then you saw something. As you can see, there's nothing in the middle in here. So these are the types of things that will happen when you're jumping in between programs. So it's important that you definitely do it as soon as possible. And of course, we covered creating our actual steam particle in Photoshop. So in our next video, you can definitely look out for the animation portion. So there are multiple ways to animate in Unity, but we're going to cover 3 specific ways. One, we're going to work on mathematics. We're going to rotate based on the user's click on any one of these objects. We're going to actually rotate it on its axis. And we're going to give it a maximum rotation and a minimum rotation to make sure it doesn't go too far. Second, we're going to animate within Unity and show you how to create a Unity-based animation and then give our different frames and tell it when to start and when to stop. And our third way is going to actually do the same animation that we did in Unity, but do it in Maya and bake it down and then import it into Unity. And we'll use the same animation tools or animation settings that we had in our previous animation from within Unity in Maya so that they're seamless. And show you how you can animate objects in Maya and bring it into Unity. So this is Edithson Abelard. I hope you enjoyed this video tutorial on how to create steam in Unity. And I'll see you in the next one. Edithson Abelard, I'm out.